Hello and welcome. Come meet me on your mat for this step-by-step guide on how to achieve forearm stand in your yoga practice. So if you haven't already checked out my previous video on progressions and techniques for how to achieve inversions or arm balances, then I highly suggest checking that video out before you start this one, just to make sure that your body is warm and you have the awareness of that mind-body connection before you try going upside down. So as you come to your mat, you're gonna start in a tabletop position. Just a couple of cat-cows to warm up the spine before we attempt going upside down. On your first inhale, you're going to arch your back and lift your chin up to the sky as your throat opens. And then as you exhale, your back will round and your tailbone will tuck and you push the floor away from you. A few more just to articulate the spine. Lifting the chin, inhale. Rounding the spine, exhale. Following your breath to movement for 3. Exhaling to round. Inhaling to arch for 2. Exhaling to round. Last one to arch. And exhale to round. Very nice. Come back to a neutral spine. Now, as we prepare for our forearm stand, you're going to lower both of your elbows down onto the ground. And you just want to make sure that you have a good distance of your elbows away from one another. Best practice to find that is to find opposite hands to opposite elbows. You're just going to kind of cup your hands to the elbows. And then you're going to flatten your palms back down onto the ground. Now, don't worry too much if your elbows do narrow in. It does depend on your shoulder range of motion, but it's just a good marker and a good gauge to start. Once you have that marker, you're going to step both of your feet back so you come into a forearm plank. This is a perfect progression into a forearm stand. You're getting your hips high, your core engaged, and you're pushing palms and elbows down into the ground, so you're lifting out of the floor. The next step would be to walk your feet in and hike the hips up like you would into a dolphin pose. Keep your palms flat and the fingertips spread wide apart. Your next step is to lift one foot away from the floor. Find that lift of your heel and then raise up onto the tippy toes of your foot on the ground. Just transfer your weight. Good. Lower your heel and place your lifted leg back down. Left side lift, you lift your left leg. Your right heel lifts and you transfer your weight, your shoulders forward. And then you lower your heel down, the toes come down. One more on each side. Lift your right leg, lift your left heel, lower your left heel, lower your right leg. One more, left leg, right heel, left leg. Whew. Bend your knees, come back down to the ground. Give yourself a moment of rest in child's pose. Bring your fingertips towards your heels and rest down. And then as you lift your head and shoulders back up, you can continue to try and practice your forearm stand with your palms flat on the ground and your elbows in that 90-degree angle. It is a little bit more challenging for the shoulders and the range of motion that you have in that shape. So alternatively, and my preference of doing forearm stand is with palms connected to one another. You still want to find that measure of distance of your elbows, so cupping opposite elbow with opposite hand, and then bringing palms to touch. Now, the palms flat on the ground is still a great way to work into that shoulder flexibility and that shoulder opening, because it is still very important when you come upside down that you can get that extension of your shoulders and that opening of your shoulders so that you can stack shoulders above elbows and hips above shoulders. So if you want to attempt palms to touch, just try that out. Again, measure the elbows. Come back to your dolphin pose, tuck the toes, knees lift, look to your toes. Now if your palms are touching, it's totally, Now, if your palms are touching, it's still pushing the floor away from you. So really dig your pinkies into the mat. And then this time as you lift one leg from the mat, it might be your right, you again find little hops. So it doesn't have to be high. You're not really jumping into it. It's more of a transfer of your weight forward. So you give it a little bit of a hop, a little bit of a hop, a little bit of a hop. Try the next side. Left leg lifts. Same thing, little bit of a hop, little bit of a hop, little bit of a hop. Yeah, and then take rest again. Wanting to make sure you give yourself enough of a break between sides. Roll the shoulders, shake the shoulders, find some steady breaths. And then the progressions are there. It's really about getting comfortable of your head being below your heart, and that action of pushing the floor away from you. Because a really key thing in your forearm stand is that you don't want the crown of the head resting on the ground. You're actually pushing the floor away from you with your elbows and the hands on the ground. So another really good way of practicing that, if you are struggling to get your head off the ground, is just some shoulder elevation and depressions. So find your dolphin pose again, lift your knees, lift your hips. And then find the time to lower the crown of the head to the ground, depress the shoulders, and then push the floor away from you, elevate the shoulders, lift your head. That is a perfect way to start to gauge if you are ready for a forearm stand. Because if you can't lift your head away from the ground, you can't find that elevation out of your shoulders, then you might not quite be ready to balance on your forearms and your elbows. And it might just be a perfect way to practice building that strength, that elevation and depression. And then maybe eventually one day you'll practice that little lift of one leg, and then maybe that opposite foot floats from the mat. And I always kind of like to switch sides. And you might try with palms together, hands flat on the ground. Ooh. Give yourself a little bit of a break. And sometimes when you've just been practicing those drills so much, it can get hard to balance upside down. So give yourself some grace and some time. Give the arms enough of a break that they can handle going upside down, and it feels good and safe and comfortable to do so. A lot of inversions as well is just making sure that you stay calm when you have that flight. Let's try it again. Just a little one. And so you'll notice when I came up into that forearm stand that my hands actually started narrowing in towards one another. And that's okay if that starts happening, if your hands and elbows start moving. I don't have the most flexible shoulders, so I do find in my forearm stand, I like to keep my hands a little bit more narrow. So just play with it. See what feels good in your body. You can always have a wall to kick up to if you're worried about toppling over. But I hope this was helpful for you. And if you do catch flight in your forearm stand, I would love to know. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.